Germany against Putin's Russia sparks an inevitable war and confronts Europe with a warning that has already left the realm of theory. The discussion now is not just about Ukraine, but about what happens if Moscow comes out of this war even more armed, resentful, dependent on the military industry, and led by the same man who turned the conflict into a source of power.
We are going to take Russia's economy to a new technological level, a completely new one, continue building roads, housing, creating jobs, well-paid jobs, supporting Russian national businesses and ideas that guarantee our sovereignty. Of course, we adjust some plans according to the current situation, but all strategic development programs will be fully implemented and all social guarantees from the state will certainly be fulfilled.
On December 12, 2024, Mark Rutte, Secretary General of NATO, stated that Russia is preparing for a long-term confrontation with Ukraine and also with the alliance itself. He said that Moscow has put the economy on a war footing, with military spending expected to be between 7 and 8% of GDP in 2025, which is about a third of the Russian state budget. Now, Germany is at the center of this shift because it has stopped being just a potential power. And it has started to take on a direct role on the eastern flank, precisely where Estonia, Latvia, Poland, and the Kaliningrad region appear as points of tension. On June 30, 2026, the first German-Dutch Corps assumed tactical responsibility for ground operations in Estonia and Latvia, effective July 1. What is Putin preparing? Why has Germany become a central player? How will NATO handle this shock? The German shift in Eastern Europe is not symbolic. It changes NATO's defense structure in a sensitive area, near the Russian border and the Baltic Sea. The German-Dutch command, based in Münster, Germany, has started coordinating forces assigned to Estonia and Latvia to plan exercises, integrate reinforcements, and organize the ground response in case of collective defense. Reuters has already reported this. Reported on May 28, 2026, that this military corps would take command of NATO forces in the region to strengthen deterrence against a possible Russian aggression. In other words, Berlin is no longer just talking about European security. Berlin is putting command, troops, planning, and direct responsibility on the front line. The warning gained weight because Rutte's statement did not treat Russia as a tired power that would simply go home after Ukraine. He stated that Moscow is producing a large quantity of tanks, armored vehicles, and ammunition with support from China, Iran, and North Korea. And he said that hostile actions against NATO members are real and are accelerating. The list he mentioned includes cyber attacks, assassination attempts on British and German soil, explosions at ammunition depots in the Czech Republic, the use of immigrants as a tool against Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Finland, as well as interference with civil aviation in the Baltic region. The strongest sentence in the speech was simple: Russia is preparing for a long-term confrontation with Ukraine and NATO. This warning's economic basis is evident in the numbers. The Bank of Finland assessed in January 2026 that Russia has doubled its spending on defense and internal security, rising from 3.6% of GDP in 2020 to an allocation equivalent to 7.2% of GDP in the war effort. The same survey states that the total cost may be closer to 10% of GDP, because the war also affects other areas of the budget, such as social benefits, construction, infrastructure, and state credit. It's an economy with factories, banks, workers, contracts, and entire regions driven by the military machine. When war becomes income, employment, and political survival, peace is no longer just a simple signature on paper. The human pressure also weighs inside Russia. The British government stated at the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe that Russian losses remained very high in 2026 and amounted to about 1.3 million casualties since the beginning of the large-scale invasion. The same assessment said that Moscow faces increasingly limited mobilization options because financial incentives have become more expensive, and a large-scale compulsory mobilization could create domestic instability. This helps explain why Putin cannot simply end the war without facing a bitter question at home: what to do with a society that has been pushed to live with the conflict at its center. Putin's Russia has also started testing Europe below the threshold of open war. A report from the International Institute for Strategic Studies, cited by the Associated Press on July 2, 2026, pointed out 144 suspicious drone sightings in Europe between 2024 and 2026, including Germany, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and Denmark. According to the investigation, the campaign was intended to monitor military sites, disrupt civil aviation, and expose air defense weaknesses without provoking an immediate collective response from NATO. These are the kinds of hybrid actions, like drones, missiles, or other initiatives that fall short of a full-scale attack. Donald Tusk, the Polish Prime Minister, stated after the Eastern Flank Summit in Gdansk that the situation was unstable and that different forms of escalation could occur in the coming weeks and months. Putin may not need to invade Berlin to bring Germany into the crisis. It's enough to put pressure on the eastern flank where Germany now has direct military responsibility. The Polish border has also become an example of hybrid warfare. In April 2026, the Council of the Baltic Sea States gathered experts in Warsaw to discuss the instrumentalization of migration by Belarus and Russia as a hybrid threat against the region. The debate addressed the organized movement of vulnerable people toward the external borders of the European Union to destabilize the. Before that, Polish studies had already indicated that the crisis at the Belarus border with Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia began as an operation provoked by Minsk and evolved into a hybrid action with Russian support. Kaliningrad adds another point of tension. The Russian region is separated from the main territory of Russia and surrounded by NATO and European Union members between Poland and Lithuania. In December 2025, Putin warned that threats against Kaliningrad could lead to an unprecedented escalation and a large-scale armed conflict. In December, he warned that threats could lead to an unprecedented escalation and movement of the Kaliningrad. The warning in December did not come out of nowhere. In December, he warned of threats near the Suwalki corridor, a narrow area that connects Poland to the Baltics and frequently appears in European defense studies. Any pressure there would put Germany, Poland, the Baltics, and NATO into a major security crisis. Germany realized that the clock is not standing still. In June 2026, General Christian Freuden, the head of the German army, stated that Germany needs to be prepared for a possible Russian threat by 2029 or even earlier, citing an assessment shared within NATO. The statement doesn't mean that there is a set date for war, but it shows that Berlin is working with a shorter risk window than the public had imagined. Germany spent years being treated as an economic giant and a military dwarf. Now it needs to spend more, lead more, produce more, and support the defense of Eastern Europe at a time when Moscow is trying to find out whether NATO will react as a bloc or break apart from within. Putin's calculation is dangerous because war has become the political language of the regime. The invasion of Ukraine began as an attempt to impose force on Kiev, but it has turned into an internal mechanism. That's where the expression inevitable war gains strength in the European debate, because the system set up by Putin seems catalogued increasingly less compatible with real peace. A militarized Russia with a wartime economy, masses of veterans, a heated defense industry, constant propaganda, and a desire for revenge may use the post-war period only as an interval to regain strength. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end. Support our project and contribute financially through the Pix key that appears on your screen. We are an independent channel, focused on keeping you informed with the truth. Your contribution helps us keep going.